The glass walls of my corner office offer a panoramic view of the downtown skyline, a view that costs roughly $12,000 a month in rent alone. I was reviewing the quarterly projections for my tech logistics firm, specifically the section detailing our expansion into the European market, when my assistant, Sarah, buzzed the intercom. She sounded hesitant, which was unlike her. She said there was a candidate for the senior marketing director position waiting in the lobby, but there was a discrepancy with the appointment time. I told her to send the file in and have the candidate wait. When the digital file landed on my tablet, I didn't recognize the married name at first. Vanessa Reynolds. It sounded generic, professional, completely harmless. But then I scrolled down to the education section, then to the work history, and finally I opened the attached headshot. The air in the room didn't change, the hum of the server room down the hall didn't falter, but my blood ran cold. It was her. Older, yes. The eyes were a little harder, the smile a little more practiced and tight around the edges, but it was undeniably Vanessa. The last time I had seen that face was 5 years, 2 months, and 14 days ago, illuminated by the red taillights of a Porsche Cayman as she sped away from the curb where she'd left me standing with a velvet ring box in my pocket. I swiveled my chair around to look out at the city, the heavy leather creaking beneath me. I wasn't the same person who had stood on that curb. That man was dead. He had died the moment he realized that love was a transaction he couldn't afford. The man sitting in this chair was a construct built of sleepless nights, caffeine, code, and a ruthless desire to never be vulnerable again. I tapped the intercom button and told Sarah to give me 5 minutes, then to send Mrs. Reynolds back. I needed a moment to remember exactly how we got here. To understand the satisfaction of this moment, you have to understand the depth of the hole I was in 5 years ago. I was 24, working as a junior sysadmin for a mid-sized insurance firm that treated its IT department like a necessary evil. I drove a 2008 Honda Civic with a cracked bumper and an air conditioner that only worked when the highway speed exceeded 60 miles per hour. My apartment was a basement studio in a part of town where the police sirens were just white noise, but it was ours. Or I thought it was. Vanessa and I had been together since sophomore year of college. She was the one bright spot in a life that felt like a constant uphill grind. I was working 60 hours a week, picking up freelance coding gigs on the weekends, trying to save enough for a ring and a down payment on a starter home. I thought we were a team. I thought she understood that the struggle was temporary, an investment in a future where we wouldn't have to check the bank account balance before ordering a pizza. I was wrong. The signs were there, of course. I just chose to ignore them because I was too exhausted to fight. The way she'd sigh when I said I couldn't afford a weekend trip to Cabo with her friends, the way she'd leave browser tabs open on her laptop, showing luxury handbags that cost more than my car, the way she started hiding her phone screen whenever I walked into the room. It all came to a head on our 4th anniversary. I had been saving for 3 months to take her to a place called the Obsidian, a rooftop steakhouse that everyone on Instagram was obsessed with. I had to pick up 4 extra freelance shifts just to cover the reservation deposit. I put on my one good suit, the charcoal one I'd bought for interviews, and polished my shoes until they shined. I picked her up, and she looked stunning in a red dress, but she was quiet. Not the comfortable silence of intimacy, but the heavy, suffocating silence of a courtroom before the verdict is read. Dinner was a disaster. I ordered the second cheapest bottle of wine, trying to be fiscally responsible while still celebrating, and she actually rolled her eyes. She spent the entire meal texting under the table. When the check came, it was $340. I put it on my debit card, praying the freelance deposit had cleared that morning. It had. The waiter took the card, and I breathed a sigh of relief. I reached across the table to take her hand. I wanted to tell her that I was up for a promotion, that things were going to get better, that I had a plan. I never got the chance. She pulled her hand away like I had burned her. She looked at me, her eyes flat and devoid of any warmth, and said the words that would replay in my head for the next 1,000 nights. She told me she couldn't do this anymore. She said she was tired of waiting for a life that was never going to happen. She said I lacked ambition. That was the word that cut the deepest. Ambition. I was working 80 hours a week. I was sleeping 4 hours a night. I was killing myself to build a foundation for us. But to her, ambition wasn't about effort. It was about results. It was about the car you drove and the zip code you lived in. She told me she needed someone who was already at the finish line, not someone who was still figuring out how to tie his running shoes. She dropped a napkin on the table, stood up, and didn't even look back. I sat there, frozen, the $300 steak turning to ash in my stomach. The waiter brought my card back, looking pitying. I signed the receipt with a shaking hand and walked out. I caught up to her outside the valet stand. I asked her why. I asked her if there was someone else. She didn't have to answer. A sleek black Porsche pulled up to the curb, the engine purring with that aggressive, expensive growl. The window rolled down, and a guy I vaguely recognized from her gym, some trust fund kid named Bryce, who owned a chain of supplement stores, leaned over. He didn't even look at me. He just smiled at her and popped the passenger door. Vanessa looked at me one last time. She told me that I was a nice guy, but nice guys don't pay the bills. She said she deserved better. She got in the car and they sped off, leaving me standing in the exhaust fumes. I walked the 4 miles back to my apartment in the rain because I didn't want to spend the money on an Uber. When I got home, I found that she hadn't just left. She had erased herself. Her clothes were gone, her toiletries were gone, and then the final kick to the gut. I went to the kitchen counter, where we kept the house fund jar, a little ceramic pot where we put cash for emergencies. It was empty. She had taken the $300 in cash I had stashed there for rent. I sat on the floor of that empty apartment, wet, broke, and humiliated. I checked my bank account on my phone. Balance, $42.16. Rent was due in 3 days. I had no ring, no girlfriend, and no money. I remember staring at the water stain on the ceiling, feeling a kind of darkness closing in that I'd never experienced before. It wasn't sadness, it was rage. Cold, hard, crystallizing rage. She had called me poor. She had called me ambitionless. She had treated me like a bad investment she needed to liquidate. I stood up and walked to the bathroom mirror. My reflection looked pathetic. Wet hair, red eyes, a cheap suit that didn't fit right. I made a vow to that reflection. I swore that I would never, ever be in this position again. I swore that I would build something so big, so undeniable that people like Vanessa and Bryce would have to crane their necks just to see the bottom of my shoes. I didn't sleep that night. Instead, I opened my laptop. I had been toying with an idea for an automated logistics algorithm, a piece of code that could optimize shipping routes for small businesses better than the expensive enterprise software on the market. I had been too tired, too distracted by trying to keep Vanessa happy, to really focus on it. But now I had nothing but time and a burning need to prove her wrong. I started coding at 3 a.m., and I didn't stop until the sun came up. The next 6 months were a blur of misery and productivity. I got evicted from the apartment because I couldn't make rent on my own. I sold the Honda Civic for scrap and moved into a shared room in a hostel that smelled like mildew and stale beer. I slept on bunk beds with a thin mattress, keeping my laptop in a locked backpack under my pillow so no one would steal it. I ate ramen noodles and peanut butter sandwiches. I showered in communal bathrooms with flip-flops on. And I worked. God, did I work. I quit the insurance job because they wouldn't let me work on my own projects during downtime. It was a terrifying leap, but I knew I couldn't build an empire while building someone else's spreadsheet. I took freelance coding jobs strictly for survival money, doing just enough to pay for the hostel bed and the internet connection. The rest of my time, 18 hours a day, was poured into Project V. That was my internal name for it. V for Vendetta, V for Victory, V for Vanessa. The breakthrough didn't happen with the cinematic explosion. It happened at 4:17 a.m. on a Tuesday, amidst the smell of stale coffee and the sound of a fellow hostel guest snoring in the bunk above me. The code compiled without errors. The simulation ran perfectly. My algorithm, which I called Routemaster, had successfully optimized a complex delivery grid 20% more efficiently than the industry standard. I didn't cheer. I didn't call anyone. I just closed the laptop, put my head in my hands, and wept for exactly 30 seconds. Then I washed my face with cold water and started cold calling potential investors. The first 50 calls were rejections. They heard hostile address and solo developer and hung up. But the 51st call was to a boutique venture capital firm looking for high-risk, high-reward tech. I got a meeting. I spent my last $40 on a dry cleaner to press my one suit, the same suit I wore the night Vanessa dumped me. I walked into that boardroom hungry, literally and metaphorically. I pitched not just the software, but the hunger. I told them I had nothing to lose and everything to prove. They wrote me a check for $150,000 in seed money. That check was the first shovel of dirt on the grave of the old me. I moved out of the hostel that afternoon. I rented a small, windowless office in a shared workspace and hired 2 junior developers. We worked 18 hours a day. I slept under my desk more nights than I slept in my new apartment. I became obsessed with efficiency. If a line of code didn't serve a purpose, it was deleted. If a meeting didn't result in actionable data, it was canceled. I applied the same logic to my life. No dating, no vacations, no distractions. I monitored Vanessa's social media from a burner account, not out of longing, but for fuel. I saw her vacation photos with Bryce. I saw the engagement ring he gave her, a gaudy, oversized diamond that screamed new money. I saw the wedding photos at a vineyard in Napa. I felt a pang, sure, but it was getting duller, calcifying into a hard, cold knot of determination. By year 3, Routemaster was the industry standard for mid-mile logistics. We were acquired by a major tech conglomerate, but I retained 51% control and the CEO title. The buyout put 8 figures into my personal bank account overnight. I remember looking at the balance on my phone, sitting in the same kind of expensive steakhouse where she had dumped me. I ordered the most expensive bottle of wine on the menu. I drank 1 glass, paid the bill, and left the rest. It wasn't about the wine. It was about knowing I could buy the vineyard if I wanted to. I bought the penthouse in the city center. I bought a custom-tailored wardrobe. I bought a matte black Audi R8, not because I cared about cars, but because I knew Bryce drove a Porsche. And the R8 was faster. I was winning, but it was a lonely victory. I had built the fortress of success, but I was the only one inside it. Then came the recession. The market tightened. Luxury brands took a hit. Supplement stores, it turned out, were not recession-proof. I heard through the grapevine that Bryce's business had overextended. He had leveraged everything on crypto and high-risk real estate. The crash wiped him out. I didn't celebrate. I just nodded at the screen, acknowledging the data point. In my world, poor risk management led to failure. It was just math. But I didn't know how bad it had gotten for them until that file landed on my desk. Vanessa Reynolds, applying for a job. And not just any job, a marketing director role that paid a base salary of $200,000 a year. She needed this. The resume told a story of desperation masked as pivoting. Her last 3 roles were short-term, lower-level positions. There was a gap of 6 months recently. The references section didn't list Bryce. Sarah buzzed again. Mr. Sterling, Mrs. Reynolds is ready. I stood up and buttoned my suit jacket. I walked to the floor-to-ceiling window and checked my reflection. The man staring back was sharp, groomed, and utterly unrecognizable from the boy in the rain. Send her in, I said, my voice steady. The heavy oak door opened. I didn't turn around immediately. I let her walk into the space, let her take in the vastness of the office, the expensive art on the walls, the sheer smell of power that permeated the room. I wanted her to feel small. I wanted her to feel exactly how I felt standing on that curb. Mr. Sterling? Her voice wavered slightly. It was the same voice, but the arrogance was gone, replaced with a nervous tremor. I turned around slowly. The moment our eyes locked was electric, but not in a romantic way. It was the shock of a ghost seeing the living. Her eyes went wide. Her hand, clutching a knockoff designer bag, tightened until the knuckles were white. She stopped dead in the middle of the room. "Mark?" she whispered. She sounded like she was choking on the name. "Please sit down, Mrs. Reynolds." I gestured to the chair opposite my desk. I didn't smile. I didn't offer a hand. I walked behind my massive mahogany desk and sat down, creating a physical barrier between us. She didn't move. She was scanning my face, searching for a trace of the pathetic ex-boyfriend she had discarded. She wouldn't find him. I didn't know, she stammered. company name, Apex. I didn't know it was you. It's a holding company, I said smoothly. I prefer to keep my ownership private. Please sit. We have an interview to conduct. She sat, but she was perched on the edge of the seat like a bird ready to fly. She looked tired. The designer dress she was wearing was a few seasons old. Her hair was pulled back, but I could see the gray roots she hadn't touched up. The sparkle was gone. Life hadn't just humbled her, it had crushed her. I don't know if I can do this, she said, her voice barely audible. Mark, this is insane. You own this? I founded it. I wrote the core code in a hostel room 5 years ago. But we're not here to discuss my biography. We're here to discuss your qualifications for the senior marketing director position. I've reviewed your resume. I picked up her file, flipping it open casually. It seems you've had a turbulent few years. She flinched. The market has been tough. Is that what we're calling it? I looked at her over the rim of the file. I see here you worked for B-Fit Supplements for 2 years as VP of Brand Lifestyle? She looked down at her lap. It was a family business. Your husband's business? I pressed. She nodded, unable to meet my eyes. Yes. And why did you leave? The company dissolved. Bankrupt? Yes. And your husband? I asked, the question surgical. We are separated, she whispered. The financial stress, it was too much. I leaned back in my chair, steepling my fingers. The irony was so thick I could taste it. She had left me for lack of money. She had left him because the money ran out. She was consistent, I'll give her that. So, I said, my voice dropping an octave, becoming colder. So you find yourself in need of a stable, high-paying income. You need a lifeline, and you came here. I didn't know it was you, she said quickly, a flash of her old defensiveness appearing. If I had known, I never would have come. Why? I asked. Because you thought I was still the broke IT guy who couldn't afford a steak dinner? Or because you knew that if I had any power, I would use it? She went silent. Tears were welling up in her eyes now. Mark, please. I'm desperate. I have debts. The house is in foreclosure. Bryce left me with nothing but legal bills. I need a job. I'm good at marketing. You know I am. I helped you with your freelance profile back in the day, remember? I remember. I also remember you telling me that nice guys don't pay the bills. Do you remember that, Vanessa? She closed her eyes, a tear escaping and tracking down her cheek. I was young. I was stupid. I'm sorry, okay? Is that what you want to hear? I'm sorry I hurt you. I don't care about your opinion of me. I stopped caring about your opinion of me the night I slept on a mattress that smelled like urine. What I want to know is why I should hire someone who abandons a ship the moment it takes on water. This company, I gestured to the glass walls, is built on loyalty. It's built on grinding through the hard times. You have a track record of cutting and running when the credit card is declined. I've changed, she pleaded. I have to work now. I have no choice. Necessity is not a virtue. It's just a circumstance. I watched her crumble. This was the moment I had fantasized about for 5 years. The total reversal. I held her future in my hands. I could hire her, make her work for me, make her call me sir every day. I could fire her before she even started. I could humiliate her and have security drag her out. The power was intoxicating. But as I looked at her, really looked at her, I didn't feel the rush of victory I expected. I felt pity. She wasn't a monster. She was just a shallow, frightened person who had made a bad bet. And I was the house. And the house always wins. Tell me, Vanessa, I asked, if the roles were reversed,
If I came to you broke and desperate, begging for a job at your husband's company, would you have given it to me?" She opened her mouth.
I stared at her, and the silence stretched between us like a physical weight. Her confession that she wouldn't have helped me hung in the air. It was brutal, but it was the closure I didn't know I needed. It confirmed that the woman I had spent years grieving, the version of Vanessa I thought was my soulmate, never actually existed. I had been in love with the mirage. The woman sitting in front of me was the reality, transactional, fair weather, and ultimately a bad investment. "Thank you for your honesty," I said, my voice devoid of emotion. I reached out and pressed the intercom button. "Sarah?" "Yes, Mr. Sterling?" "Please come in. We're finished here." Vanessa's eyes widened. "Wait, Mark, what does that mean? Do I have a chance?" I stood up, buttoning my jacket again. "Vanessa, this company operates on a set of core values. The first one is resilience. We build things that last. We solve problems when they seem impossible. We don't walk away when the budget gets tight or the servers crash at 3 a.m. I walked around the desk and leaned against the edge, looking down at her. "You admitted yourself that you only bet on a sure thing. You don't have the stomach for the fight. If I hire you and we hit a rough quarter, which happens in tech, you'll be the first one looking for the exit. I can't build a team around people who are looking for the door." "I won't," she cried, standing up. She reached for my arm, but I stepped back. "I swear I won't. I have nowhere else to go. Mark, please, for old time's sake, I'm begging you." It was pathetic. Seeing her beg didn't make me feel powerful. It made me feel nauseous. This was the person whose opinion had once defined my self-worth. "There are no old times," I said coldly. "There was only the P&L statement, and you are a net loss." Sarah opened the door. She took one look at Vanessa's tear-streaked face and the tension in my posture, and her professional mask didn't slip for a second. "Mrs. Reynolds, this way, please." Vanessa looked from Sarah to me. She opened her mouth to scream, to curse, to plead, but something in my expression stopped her. She saw the wall. She saw that the access she once had to my heart, to my life, to my resources had been revoked permanently. She grabbed her fake designer bag, straightened her spine in a last-ditch attempt at dignity that failed miserably, and walked to the door. Before she crossed the threshold, she turned back. "You're cruel, Mark," she spat, the venom finally replacing the tears. "Money changed you." "No," I replied, sitting back down and opening my laptop. "Money just revealed who I really was, and lack of it revealed who you were." Goodbye, Vanessa. The door clicked shut. The sound was softer than the slam of a car door in the rain, but it was infinitely more final. I didn't watch her leave the building. I didn't go to the window to see her walk to her car. I simply pulled up the next candidate's file. I had a company to run. 6 months later, Apex acquired its largest competitor in the European market. The deal pushed our valuation into the billions. To celebrate, the board insisted on a black tie gala at the city's art museum. I hate those events. The forced smiles, the overpriced canapes, the people pretending to care about art when they're really just measuring each other's net worth. But as the CEO, I had to be the face of the victory. I was standing near the Champagne Tower, listening to a senator try to explain blockchain to me, when I saw a familiar face working the room. Not a guest, staff. Wearing a black vest and holding a tray of empty flutes was a man who looked like he had aged 20 years and 5. Bryce, the trust fund king, the man who had driven the Porsche. He was balding now, his face puffy, his eyes darting around the room nervously, hoping no one would recognize him. He was working for the catering company. I watched him for a moment. I could have reproached him. I could have ordered a drink from him just to see his hand shake. I could have made a scene, but I felt nothing. No anger, no need for revenge. He was just a guy holding a tray.
He was a non-player character in my story. I turned back to the senator and continued the conversation. Later that night, as I was leaving, I saw Vanessa waiting by the service entrance. She was wearing a matching catering uniform, smoking a cigarette, looking exhausted. She saw me. I saw her see me. I was getting into the back of my town car. My driver held the door open. Vanessa took a step forward, maybe to say something, maybe just to be acknowledged. I didn't look away, but I didn't smile either. I just got in the car. "Home, sir?" the driver asked. "Home," I said. As the car pulled away, I didn't look in the rearview mirror. That's the thing about moving forward. You can't do it if you're staring at what you left behind. My life today is quiet. I didn't buy a vineyard to show off. I bought a small cabin on a lake about 2 hours from the city. No cell service, no internet. I go there on weekends. I didn't fill the void Vanessa left with another high-maintenance partner. I adopted a dog, a golden retriever mix named Buster, who had been returned to the shelter twice because he was too energetic. He sits by my feet while I code, happy just to be in the room. He doesn't care about the stock price. He doesn't care if I wear a suit or sweatpants. He just cares that I'm there. I realized that Vanessa was right about one thing that night at the steakhouse. I did lack ambition, her kind of ambition. I didn't want the flashy car or the social status. I wanted freedom. I wanted the ability to wake up in the morning and not be afraid of the bills. I wanted to know that if I fell, I had built a safety net strong enough to catch me. She wanted the fruit without planting the tree. I spent 5 years in the dirt, tending the roots, weathering the storms, and now I get to sit in the shade. Sometimes I think about that night in the rain. I think about the version of me that stood there, heartbroken and broke. I want to go back and tell him that it's going to be okay. I want to tell him that the pain is necessary, that the fire that is burning his life down right now is the same fire that will forge the steel in his spine. But I can't go back. I can only move forward. A few weeks ago, I received a notification on LinkedIn. Vanessa had viewed my profile. Then a friend request, then a message. "Hey Mark, I saw the article about the acquisition. Congrats. I've been doing a lot of thinking." I didn't read the rest. I didn't block her. Blocking her would imply that her presence bothered me. Instead, I just deleted the message. Then I closed the laptop, whistled for Buster, and went for a walk by the lake. The air was crisp, the water was still, and for the first time in a long time, the silence wasn't lonely. It was peaceful. I had won the only game that mattered. I had reclaimed my life, and I didn't owe anyone an apology for enjoying it. The best revenge isn't ruin. It isn't making the other person suffer. The best revenge is irrelevance. It's getting to a place where their existence simply doesn't register on your radar anymore. Vanessa and Bryce are out there somewhere, chasing the next shortcut, looking for the next easy ride. I hope they find it. Or I hope they don't. It doesn't matter to me. I have a company to build, a dog to feed, and a sunrise to catch. And that, finally, is enough.